Namaste. Namaste, everyone. Hope everyone is very well. Thank you so much for joining today. As you can see, I have my guest with me, Arti Agarwal ji. Just before we pass over to Arti ji to tell us more about herself, just a reminder to everyone to please subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it if it's of interest with to your friends and family. RTG here, she's also very present on social media. So perhaps RTG, you could just start by telling the viewers, what is your YouTube channel called? What is your Twitter handle? That sort of things they can find you.
Sure. So thank you, Melissa ji. Namaste to everyone who's watching. And so for those of you who don't know me, I'm a researcher and an author. I recently wrote a book called Cownomics last year. And I've been working on Hindu causes for a long time. I run a non-profit organization called Ishitwa Dharm Sansthapan Foundation. You can check out ishitwa.org if you like. And within the scope of that organization, we run the Hindu Genocide Project and a few other projects as well. So the Hindu Genocide Project is where we document all crimes against Hindus, essentially, in a line. And about me, so basically, I'm an IIT Roorkee grad, MIT grad, and now I'm continuing with further research. My Twitter handle is Parantapa, and same for Instagram, same for Facebook. And YouTube, let me just find the link, but you can find it if you search for Ishitwa Dharm Sansthapan Foundation on YouTube. So I guess that's a little bit of a blurb about me. Over to you, Melissa ji.
Perfect. And actually, you were very modest, I feel, RTG, in your introduction just then. Because I know that when I first stumbled across your presence on Twitter, I found you to be such a wealth of knowledge about Hindu karma, but also about Hindu issues, real world Hindu issues. And I realized just how many projects you were involved in. And if you look at the Hindu genocide website, it's really impressive. How many projects you were involved in. Oh, I can hear it echoes. That stopped. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just looking up my YouTube channel and I think the live. Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So thank you again so much for your time today. So the topic of conversation in this is, can Hinduism survive? It's not a very upbeat title, I appreciate, but it's a very important title. So my first question for you, RTG, is, how would you describe the state of Hinduism today?
So that's like such a complex question, when I saw the topic which you wanted to discuss on, my first thoughts were, if it is something very specific, I can read and I can, just describe it. But the issues you picked up are such complex, but such important issues that I really need to think when I say something. So the state of Hinduism today, if I take it in a comparative point of view, when I see even from just pictures, even from just black and white pictures from 100 years ago. I'm not talking about 500 years ago or 300. We don't have photographs, but I mean, even if I just look at photographs from just 100 years ago, I realize how much of our cultural strengths and cultural pride we have lost in that much time. So, I was for one of our projects, I was just browsing through a repository of archival photographs of India from 1920s, 30s, 40s, just pre-independence, basically. And you could see people wearing turbans everywhere. And you could see people even going to study in colleges, in schools, in Indian dresses, right? And this is while we were under British rule, actually. This is pre-independence, not after independence. We were under British rule. But you could see the most famous colleges in India, like some of, I've forgotten which exact one right now, but one of the very famous colleges in Mumbai. There were scholars in full length kurtas, formal kurtas and dhotis. And they were discussing some very scientific things. So when I see these type of things, I feel like, we have lost so much of cultural integrity, so much of cultural pride, and so much of that ethos, where it's a matter of fact that we're a Hindu majority country. Now if I go to some other country and I come back to India, yeah, I mean, I would feel like, okay, yes, I'm in a Hindu country, like it's a Hindu majority country, I feel that. But it's nothing compared with what even just a few pictures can do when you compare it. We see people, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the clothes we wear. I'm just saying that the pride which we used to carry is missing by and large. And this is just one of the indicators, I would say. I think the place, it's sort of an indicator of where we are with Hinduism today in some ways, which is that, of course, I'm seeing, at least in the last, compared with just the last 20 years, because I'm not that old. So, if I just take the last 20 years in which I can say I've made an intelligent observation of how people are, I think the impact or the influence or the hold the leftists have over the younger generation has reduced. That much I would completely agree. That even just say just 10 years ago, the kind of vitriolic things we used to hear about Hinduism, the kind of hate we used to get. I'm not saying it has lessened. I'm just saying that there are fewer people who are buying into it now. So that has definitely improved, but we are nowhere close to reclaiming our heritage in terms of our culture, our traditions, our values. And sometimes, in fact, I see people, in the name of protecting heritage or culture, they go to the other extreme. They start giving either this ideological science kind of things, arguments, which I'm not saying there's nothing scientific about it, but even the science of our traditions is on a much deeper level. It's not A plus B equal to C kind of a thing. It's far more complex than what we can explain with modern science sometimes. Or we just completely just to show how progressive the right wing is now, we completely dismiss it, that, oh, this is just some silly thing which a cult follows or something. So I feel like this is one of the bigger issues, and many of the so-called self-appointed Hindu leaders also do this many times, and that is a bigger cause of concern to me, because the masses, at the end of the day, the problem is that the masses do follow the leaders. That's why they are leaders, right? So they have so many of these people have kind of reached that kind of influential place or something, and if they're not so knowledgeable of Hindu issues, or if they're not so rooted in Hindu traditions, they should just not speak on it. It's that simple. If I don't understand, if I say I don't understand astronomy, I'm not going to speak on astronomy, right? So it's just that you're not a subject matter expert on it. But when the so-called leaders start making illogical, wrong, downright wrong, disrespectful statements about Hinduism, you really begin to wonder where we are headed. So in that way, I feel like we have completely deteriorated in terms of the standards of knowledge about Hinduism. So, we have regained some of our consciousness in terms of knowledge about our history. I see people much better informed about our history these days. But as far as our Shastras are concerned, our Hindu spirituality is concerned, the depth of Hindu practices, not just traditions. There are so many yogic practices, so many Ayurvedic practices, which are still like a taboo. Just simple Ayurvedic practices people don't understand. Ayurveda is not just about taking one herb in the morning and one herb in the night. Ayurveda is a completely holistic system of healing the body, which includes the mind. So, in Ayurveda, it's both mind and body. It's not just the body, which is the first lesson of Ayurveda itself. And people don't know these kind of things. So we've lost a lot. We've just started the curve of regaining our cultural integrity, but we have a very long way to go. It's a very long answer, I'm sorry, but it's a very complex question.
Absolutely. And actually, I think every sentence that you said I agreed with, and I wrote it down to try and bring it up. You brought up so many points that I'm trying to think, how do I fit all this together again? So thank you so much. I just want to show one comment from Abhimanyuji here, was remembering Arti ji today. In so many months that I didn't watch her live. Well, I think maybe one reason she's busy with her PhD coursework at the moment.
Yeah. Yes. So I will probably start uploading a lot more YouTube videos and stuff from the next year. I have, I had noted down of several topics on which many people have asked for me to speak on those topics. Some of them are very controversial, but I've not had enough time to, because I don't want to just speak like that. I want to make sure that whatever I'm saying has some basis and I'm giving some proper references, and, I have coherent point to make. So I will be doing more videos definitely, but next year, not this year. So thank you so much for remembering me to Abhimanyu.
Fantastic. So I'll start with the last point you were talking about, Ayurveda, because actually one of the first impressions that you made upon me was when I was reading, I think it was on your website, you'd written that depression is where a person is so lost from their truth self, their divine central self, that they don't know how to return to themselves. And I remember that just having such a chord with me. It just completely made sense to me. And I often say that one of the reasons why I became a Hindu was because I felt that it made me just understand myself better. It made me so resilient in my mental health, even though I'm very fortunate, I never had mental health challenges before, but I suddenly almost felt like superwoman-like in my mental abilities, because you just realize that everything in this Maya, you can be resilient to. So yes, that was just one thing that really popped into my mind when you were talking about Ayurveda. Then that's one of the first times that I came across you. So going back to how you first started the answer about how many Hindu leaders, and it's not just political leaders, it's some religious Hindu leaders, and I deliberately do this because many of the 5-star gurus, I would argue, aren't Hindu. And in fact, some of them themselves say they're not Hindu, even though they are portraying themselves as Hindu leaders, unfortunately.
Right.
It's really confusing. But yes, trying to pass Hinduism off as science, as you said, no, it's scientific in some aspects, but in many ways it's beyond science. It's like science plus plus. And I agree that this sort of misrepresentation of Hinduism, of the Shastras, of the interpretations of the Shastras is probably the most damaging part of what's going on against Hinduism today. And often it's like the Christianization of Hinduism, I feel. I find people in India, they're much more aware of the sort of the threat from Islam. It's very much in your face in terms of like gruesome pictures and cases. But the Christian angle is it's even more sinister because it's happening without people even realizing it.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Yeah. And I think underneath it all, from the Hindu leaders, I sense it's almost like they have a feeling that Hinduism in itself isn't good enough. So they're trying to like reinvent it and trying to like reinterpret it without realizing actually it's fine as it is. I was drawn to Hindu Dharma for Hindu Dharma. I was drawn to the actual interpretations, the real interpretations of the Shastras, of being so inspired by the great Hindu leaders throughout history, such brave warriors. It's not this kind of pseudo Hinduism thing that's coming along where we're comparing Jesus to Bhagavan Krishna and this nonsense. I find many people, they try to justify it by saying it's a way to try and entice Westerners in. But I feel it's the complete opposite. I say this every time. It's the most off-putting thing for a Westerner when you're trying to get away from Christianity and see the alternative, to then be told, well, it's just like Christianity in this way and that way. And yeah.
So I think you make such a valid point here, because the people who come to Hindu Dharma, they come to it because they're somehow not fulfilled or not happy with Christianity. They are seeking something far more than what Christianity can offer to them. And to be told that this is like a refashioned version of Christianity is really actually, sort of sending them away in some
Yeah.
ways. And I think that, it's also dishonest, maybe not dishonest, but disingenuous in many ways, that, why are you trying, why, do you not have enough on your own that you need to sit behind Jesus to say that Hinduism is great? Like, do we not have enough deities? Do we not have enough vibrant culture? Do we not have enough festivals? Do we not have enough practices to pull people in, that we need to sit behind Jesus, that say and say that, oh, come here now, we also see, we respect Jesus. That's not the point here. The point is that why do you need to say anything about Jesus? If
Yes.
somebody asks you, do you respect Jesus, you can just say, of course, he's a master. I respect Jesus. And that can be like a personal view. It's not like something which everybody has to get behind also. But you need to be more vocal and more blunt about your own culture, because they will come to us if they understand we are actually offering them something far more than Christianity can offer. And I, at least on a personal level, believe that Christianity ends where Hinduism begins. So, because in my experience, like, Christianity has a very binary kind of a logic, heaven and hell, sinner and saint, good and bad, high and low, sin and whatever else they have, and Satan and God. So everything is very binary. And even the charity you do in Christianity is sort of more like, something you get after your life, than the afterlife, right, in heaven or something, or to avoid hell. So, there's no concept of anything other than heaven and hell. There's nothing more than things to do with the flesh, or things which are materialistic in nature. So even I know that there are certain sects of Christian spirituality as well, but even those I cannot really equate it to, say, our Bhagavad Gita, because our Bhagavad Gita is not asking you to remember Jesus so you can be a good person. Krishna is saying, the more you remember me, the lesser you will incur any karma from your actions. And then, as a habit, when you keep remembering me, see, what you remember in your last moments in life is what you achieve in the end. So, when you're on the verge of death, when you're on your deathbed, when you're just passing away, you don't really have a huge control over your mind at that point of time, right? So what you're going to remember in those moments is what has been the strongest experiences and emotions of your life. The net of that is what you'll remember at the end of your life. What Krishna is saying is that, when the more you remember me all your life, that is what you will remember in your last moments, and then you will immediately my state, meaning moksha, right? So he is giving a very clear method to achieving the ultimate, which is beyond any materialistic things in Hinduism. So these kind of very profound but subtle differences get completely lost in translation when you say that, oh, we are like Christianity 2.0 or something. So we are not Christianity 2.0. And it also kind of whitewashes all these crimes. I would, at least to me, they are crimes of these mindless conversions of Hindus to Christianity, because that's what Christians do, right? That's what they have been doing. The missionaries, the evangelists, that's what they do. They wear, instead of wearing the cross, they will wear the saffron color clothes, and they will look like as if they are as if they're Hindu priests or saints or something, and they will then say, oh, that's how they trap poor people, the less educated people, or the people even in cities now. Actually, I can't even say less educated. So, even they're doing this not just in villages, even in cities, they're doing the same thing. And somehow people fall into that trap. But so we don't need to be like them. That's what I feel like. It's, how can you say that you're any different from them if you do the same thing as them? So that's my take on it, at least.
Absolutely. And I would say, there have been so many rishis, sants, there are so many devis, so many devtas to choose as your iftadev,
Exactly.
to worship, to appreciate. Why do you need to choose then Jesus as another one?
Yeah.
You're so fortunate already,
Right.
So then on to my next question. So what would you say is the state of Hindus today?
Right. So, in many ways, the state of Hindus is what is the state of Hinduism itself. Because, see, you were making a very subtle point earlier, which I will expand on. which is that, it's not Hinduism which needs revival or reformation or, transformation. It is Hindus who need that. And we need that because we have lost touch with our roots. And when I say our roots, I mean the wealth of knowledge available in our Shastras. Because I personally believe that, if I want to learn something about Hinduism, I always go back to the source books. I'm not somehow scared or, I don't have a mental block about reading the Vedas or reading the Upanishads or, reading the Charak Samhita. They're very big, voluminous works, of course. But, the beauty of these scriptures is even if you just read a few pages, your whole context of life itself changes. You don't have to read the entire Upanishad also, for that matter. Even if you just read one verse of the Upanishad, and you contemplate on even just that one verse, it has so much potency, so much power to just completely shift your entire perspective of your situation, your personal situation in life, that it's not a joke to even read the source books. Why would I want to go and listen to some Hindu leader who thinks that we are all the same DNA and blah blah blah, and instead of going and reading something from the Upanishads? So in my honest opinion, I think Hindus need to go back to the source books. The very reason why Hindus don't read the source books is because somehow they have been led to believe that this is too difficult and this is beyond you, and you need something like some like superpower to understand it. I feel like no matter where you are in life, it will raise you from where you are to at least the next level. You don't have to be a rishi to read it, but you will start the path towards becoming a rishi if you start reading it. And this was a dincharya. Dincharya is a Sanskrit word which means like a lifestyle. Like, we do it every day. It was not something unusual to read a few verses of Bhagavad Gita or Upanishad, or whichever scripture you like, every day. This was a part of our life. We have just lost that because of 100 reasons. But I think Hindus need to do that a whole lot more, because you can't really fight for your culture unless you first know what your culture is. And there are so many misinformed, everybody gives an opinion, so it's not like, you don't really become more knowledgeable by reading 100 opinions, because the more you read, the more confused you get sometimes, because there's so many people saying so many different things. So because that confusion and that fog is getting thicker and thicker, because now even in the so-called right wing, there are many factions. Like I think there are the trads, and then the Raitas, and then there are so many other factions which I don't even know. I'm not in any faction. So, and all these factions come up because they're all like, sort of hanging on to one part of Hinduism and ignoring the rest. So, in my opinion, I think if Hindus go back to the source books, at least become better Hindus. This is, I think, something which Rajiv ji said earlier, many years ago. It was in a live interaction when he was talking, when I heard him say this, and that has stuck in my head for a long time. He said that I think first we need to become better Hindus. So I think that is the summary of what I would say about where Hindus stand today. I think we need to become better Hindus. And even casually, even jokingly, we do not need to diss our scriptures or our culture, because it's very normalized. Making fun of your own kings, making fun of your own scriptures, making fun of your own deities or your Puranic stories has become so normalized that, even unconsciously, many times I see people doing it. See, if Hinduism was like, the biggest religion on earth or something, and we were not under attacks, those kind of things may not even matter. But in a time when, we are facing so much of Hindu-phobic and hateful attacks from every lobby, I don't think Hindus themselves need to make jokes about their own culture. I don't think I'm not saying it's good or bad or right or wrong. I'm just saying it's unnecessary. It's not in the best. It's not a best take. So, we are not fragile, but that doesn't mean we'll also hate our own culture all the time, right? So we need to have that much sensibility at least.
Yeah. So when you were talking about all the different factions, even within the right wing, even the word right wing, I don't like that expression.
Yeah. It doesn't fit us anyway, the term right wing.
It's the dharmic wing, Anyway, I find that it can be quite, it's very frustrating to see. And I must admit, sometimes it actually kind of upsets me to see all of this, these factions occurring. And I just have to remind myself, not to get too disheartened with it and just focus, as you say, on being a better Hindu myself then. Not get too entangled in all of these words of wars of words between the right wingers, and just focus on myself and my family and making sure we are strong Hindus ourselves. So I really reverberated with what you were saying there. So when you were saying about reading the source books, how Hindus don't do that. I mean, one key challenge there is obviously so few people have the key to really understand the source books in terms of the Sanskrit language. I mean, obviously, if you understand an Indian language, Hindi, Maratha, whichever, you're probably going to get a better version than someone like me who can only still probably read in English, and the English translations are just horrendous. And they're very Christianized. They'll be talking about angels and like all these things that just, for me, invoke one set of ideas that are very Christian. And I'm trying to obviously separate that from because I understand that it's just a poor translation. But many people, they will just get very confused. Very unfortunate. So obviously, a major reason why the knowledge and ability to understand the Shastras, to interpret them, has disappeared is the demise of Brahmins over the last 1,000 years. And that kind of brings me then on to the next topic, which is Hindu genocide, which, as we started off saying, you've done a lot of research on this. So it was actually, I believe it's your Guruji, Arti, who I once heard say that Hindus are the victims of a double genocide. There's the actual genocide, and then there's the denial from society, from the world, of that genocide. And I found that really a powerful statement and very true. So what and who would you say is to blame for the Hindu genocide continuing to this day? And, we will both be very strongly in saying it is happening today still. Who and what do you think is allowing it to continue to this day?
I think you asked many questions there, actually. So the fact that it is a denial of a genocide. So actually, one of the things I'm working on, since we're on the subject, is on genocide studies. So, we have already launched an academic course, a program, in which my organization is a part of that academic program, where we actually teach people genocide studies. And we've already, I think, finished the first batch, and the next batch will be starting, I guess, in the next month or something. So one of the things we teach is that, the denial of the genocide facilitates further genocides. There are several stages of a genocide, and denial is one of the stages. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the fact that my guru is the one who actually talked about it, because I don't hear any other guru talking about it. And even the first time I heard the word Hindu genocide was from him. So that is where I actually got the inspiration to, explore this topic further, and to look at it further and to see the history of it. And then, of course, I took the project on its own trajectory. But so that's the biggest problem, where the Hindu leaders themselves don't talk about the genocide. And it's considered controversial, it's considered like a taboo kind of a subject. But the problem is it just makes the denial so much easier, because if Hindus themselves don't talk about their own genocide, why will anybody else talk about it? So we have been working a lot on trying to get recognition for some of the genocides which have happened historically. And while we are doing our work, and there are several Hindu organizations now in US, in UK, I don't know if I can't say in India other than my organization. No organization in India, maybe Panan Kashmir. I think that was maybe one more organization. So yeah, 2 organizations in India and a few in US, a few in UK. We are working on getting international recognition for the genocide. But whenever it comes to genocides that have happened in India, and most of them have happened in India, the biggest hurdle we run into is the Indian government itself doesn't recognize the genocide. So the very short answer to your question, if I take it, if I condense everything into one, is that the Indian government needs to recognize the genocide of Hindus. Because only when the Indian government recognizes the genocide can we actually take it one step further and then go to the US Congress or go to the European Parliament or go to UN to get recognition. Because they can always say that, oh, I mean, why are you coming to us? Go to your own government, right? So it's in that way, actually, we have made a little more progress on getting recognition for the Bangladesh genocide than for the Indian genocide. Because even though the Bangladesh government also does not recognize the genocide of Bengali Hindus, but it's a little bit easier for us because we can say that the government is not, cooperative of Hindus, and the Hindus are minority there. Here we are a majority, and we are in worse straits here. So, in that sense, the biggest hurdle is that the no government in India, and I'm very categorically saying this, that no political party in India. When I say no government, I mean no political party in India has even has this on their agenda. Like, it's not just that they're not doing it, they're not even saying that they're going to do it. They don't even mention it in any of the manifestos or the political campaigns. We saw, right, what happened with the Kashmir files, that even the courts, they finally denied any further investigation, any further inquiry, any further even rehabilitation of Kashmiri Hindus is not happening. And we just yesterday, was it yesterday or day before yesterday, one more Kashmiri Pandit has been murdered again in Shopian in Kashmir. So, these things are going on continuing, and we are here, standing with so many, we are always just given this, we are asked to just give a straight jacket kind of a response to it in media, in other places, because you can't say so you can't criticize the government beyond a certain point, apparently. So that kind of straitjackets us. We can't voice our concerns beyond a certain point, because that's considered like you're creating whatever chaos, blah blah blah. You're disturbing the peace. I'm like an official disturber of the peace here. So that is the constraint we face, and that is the denial. So denial it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of these constructs. It happens because of these, sort of like pressure tactics, these kind of indirect pressure sometimes on people, even on the media for that matter. Even if the media, certain people want to talk about it, they can't, they don't have that kind of freedom to talk about these type of issues. So that is how denial happens, and that is how denial facilitates for the genocides, as we are seeing in real time. I mean, we have been seeing every few weeks, we hear about the murder of some Hindu or Pandit in Kashmir again and again. And even the CAA has not been implemented till now. So we had to face so much of flack. There were so many people, so much public property was burned in opposing the CAA. Even in the US, I think it was in California or something, some of the US politicians gave such comments on the CAA, and they were trying to sort of rein in on us, kind of. But the problem is that we have been defending the CAA for 2-3 years now, and all of us have seen so much hate for Hindus because of the CAA. We didn't bring the act, the government brought the act, but we have been defending it for so many years, and it's not even brought into practice. So it's a big letdown for many of the Hindus, because we fought tooth and nail for that, with the hate lobbies. So, in that sense, it's like a double-barreled gun which we are facing. We're like, we are sort of between the devil and the deep blue sea, as the expression goes, because on the one hand, the government is not really giving us a free hand in terms of reclaiming our rights. We don't want to create ruckus. I mean, hey, if we wanted to create ruckus, we could have done that in the 1990s itself. And we've had 30 years to create ruckus. If that is what Hindus really wanted, we had 30 years to create ruckus. We're not creating ruckus. We want our rights. We want our people to stop getting murdered for no good reason, just because they are Hindus. We're not asking for the earth and the stars. We're asking for basic human rights here. We don't have that. And we don't have any method to get that in this democracy. On the other hand, because of certain decisions taken by the government, it's the Hindus who face Hindu phobia. So, if I mean, you're in UK, so the most recent attacks on Hindus in Leicester, and the reasoning given was, oh, you guys are BJP and RSS and Hindutvavadis or blah blah blah. Many of the Hindus in other countries, they have nothing to do with BJP and RSS. They are living in their own countries. They have their own political opinions about their countries. So why will they care about BJP and RSS? But that's the reason cited. Of course, it's a lame reason, but I'm just saying, that's used as a way to further Hindu phobia. And the Indian government is not doing enough. I mean, they gave a statement here, a statement there, but that's not enough. So we need to build our hegemony for Hindu causes also, not just for economic causes. In economic causes, we have built some hegemony, but not for our traditional things.
And actually, I would argue that they could strengthen that the socioeconomic work they're doing through Hindu causes.
Of course, yes.
As we bring up CAA, the farmers' laws, if they put out the Hindu narrative, particularly the Hindu genocide narrative, they would suddenly, I feel, very confidently that they would have a tool with which to bring on board the rest of the world to our way of seeing things.
Yeah.
And yet by doing the opposite, you're just giving weapons to the people who are opposing it and shooting themselves in the foot. And as you say, then they can't implement CAA, they can't implement the farmers' laws. So it's really stupid what they're doing. The Hindu genocide narrative is such an opportunity. And there's no shame in it. I really don't understand what the issue is. Potentially it might be that they're fearing the initial backlash and they're trying to maintain peace or maintain just in the short term, but not realizing that in the long term, it's the most disastrous thing. It's the death knell of Hindus.
Right.
So yes, to be really standing behind the Hindu genocide narrative, they need to be setting up museums about this. I mean, Francois Gauthier-ji, his museum, I think, is the only one I'm aware of that focuses on Hindu genocide in the whole world. And that was all through private donations, I believe.
Yes.
So the government, they should be creating these museums. Jews, other Armenians, all other ethnicities who have faced genocide, they do these things. They fund research on their topics, and universities across the world, they'll put professors, esteemed professors, into distinguished universities to focus and push out research on these topics. And as you say, in India, there's nothing at all. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's denial from themselves. So you mentioned also about this same DNA problem. And I've heard that the latest one is that that RSS is announcing is that all Indians are Hindus. So obviously that includes all the Indian Muslims and the Indian Christians. And by contrast, it also means that people who are not Indian can't be Hindu, right? So I can't be a Hindu. So it's just so messed up and illogical. As you were saying, and one of the things that really irritates you is like just how illogical things are said by some Hindu leaders. This idea, I mean, I sometimes wonder, some of the things that I said, I wonder if it's because they haven't appreciated exactly what they're saying, because it's they're saying it in English and maybe they're not understanding. So I'm just thinking about things like, the word mythology, how maybe they're not understanding what does that mean when you're saying that. So perhaps you want to comment on that, how the role of language features in this, because I know you have also picked up on things like people using expressions like having beef with something, when you have a problem with something. This is actually a real problem that comes about because Indians or Hindus are using the English language and probably not understanding how to use it correctly, or not understanding what they're saying when they're using English.
I think this is also a very, very complex issue, because on the one hand you have Indian Hindus and on the other hand you have non-Indian Hindus. So my reason for not opposing English is usually because the non-Indian Hindus don't really speak any language other than English. That's like a lingua franca. So, and I do believe that Hinduism does need to spread out of India a whole lot more, because, as we already discussed, you can see the state of our human rights in India. So that is the reason why I don't entirely oppose the usage of English. But on the other hand, at least for Indians, who are in India, I think that, if you want to use English, at least have the correct translation for it. And the reason why we use wrong translations is because, for the last more than a century, the people who have translated in Hindu works have been colonizers. So, we are just regurgitating the words of the colonizers. So, in that sense, we are not really thinking about what we are saying or what we are doing. Like when somebody sneezes, people still say, bless you. And that's, again, it's a Christian thing. So, many of these things which we use in every day, we have just picked it up from school or society or something. And we don't know where they're coming from, because we've not even been taught Christianity. It's not just that we've not been taught Hinduism, but even if people have a basic understanding of Christianity, they will know that, when you say the Lord, what it means. There's only one, the Lord, in Christianity. All the other gods are small g God. Only the Christian God is a capital G God. This is a very subtle thing, but that's exactly what the colonizers do when they write about our deities, our literature. They will write our gods as small g gods. But when they talk about Christians, it is the God. There is only one true God. That's their belief at the end of the day, right? There is only one God. So these kind of subtleties of language are not something everybody can understand. To put it very simply, even people with good English may not understand this, because this is not even about English. This is just the colonizers' words, which have become everyday usage in our language, because we were the colonized people. We did not have a say in that. And that decolonization of the language itself, every language, we could have decolonized English as well, for that matter. It's not just that we could have reclaimed our languages, that we should anyways have done, but we could have decolonized English as well. I mean, look at American English. It's so different from British English, right? You can leave out the Christianity part, but, the Americans made it a point to ensure that their version of English is nothing like British English. So we could have done the same thing. We could have decolonized English itself as well. But we fortunately or unfortunately, we got a whole series of governments who had absolutely no interest in that, and still don't. I know that this particular government has started talking about decolonization, but, in the name of decolonization, all we're doing is just renaming a few things here, renaming a few things there, and it doesn't even add up. Like, renaming Rajpath to Kartavya Path is not something I think is a direct equivalent. We could have called it Gaurav Path or something. Kartavya just sounds like it's our duty to what? I mean, duty for what? Like, I don't understand what is the Kartavya being talked about over here. We could have called it a Dharma Path, right? That could have been a very nice thing to uplift the society. Kartavya just sounds like, we're supposed to do something. So I think that, we have not really understood the meaning of decolonization. And because if we understood even the meaning of decolonization, instead of doing these things, the first thing we would do is, ban certain words from the language, or not ban it, but at least not teach it as a part of the curriculum in schools. Or, okay, if you want to teach Christianity, but don't teach Christianity as a part of English, right? That cannot be so. So if somebody wants to learn Christianity on their own, that's their perspective, but it should not be taught to everybody as English, as a language, right? And similarly, like some Sanskrit words should not be translated into any language, because there is no direct equivalent for it. Like Chetna. Chetna is a word for which I haven't found any English word. Atman, not Atma. Atman is another word for which there is no direct equivalent in the English language. And I think, again, Rajiv ji has written an entire book on it, of some of these words, non-translatables. Yeah. The ones I'm talking about are just the ones from the top of my head, like, which I find very great difficulty with. But there is a whole set of these words. And the first step of decolonization for India should be to make sure that these words are not translated anywhere, so many of Hindi words actually did make its way into the English language. Just like, because from all of the colonies, many words were actually included into the English language because the British were here for a good 150 years or something. So that process was inevitable. So, we can just, this could have just been a part of that. They could have just made dharma as a word on its own. Like karma is a word on its own, even though it has lost its meaning. But they could have actually made sure that certain words are kept as is, and the meaning is also kept as is, not just the word. Like pandit is a word which is used in the derogatory sense all the time. And it's so annoying to me when Westerners use words like, oh, this person is now doing his panditry here. And I'm like, pandit it's not very easy to be a pandit. Like in the Hindu context, to be a pandit requires a lot of study. It's like being more than a professor. So if I was to compare it with the academic credentials you need for certain titles, pandit is like equivalent or maybe even more than knowledgeable than a professor. So, it's not like it's so easy to be a pandit, and it's used in a derogatory way all the time. So we lose kind of, our own, and Indians use it. Indians outside India use it. So these kind of things should not happen in a perfectly decolonized world. I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely, yes. And it actually made me appreciate just how there was this opportunity to introduce more Hindu words into the English language, into dictionaries, as you mentioned about karma being there. And why not dharma then?
Right.
I mean, one of the things that I know really irritates us in my family is, when the word yoga is used incorrectly by Indians, by Hindus themselves, mantra as well. Yes,
right. That's another catchword.
And as you say, it opens the door then to Westerners exploiting it even more. And then you have things like jinn yoga and these other just absolutely horrific ideas, or just that any person who does a yoga asanas, takes a yoga asanas class maybe once a month, calling themselves a yogi. So it's a real problem. I mean, I actually find that Indian English is even more Christianized than British English. Like the word Christian, christened, I hear that so often, that buildings are christened when they're built. And the words that to me just sound so stilted, so strange to be hearing this, but you hear it all the time in India. So I personally think that the language is a big, big problem. I mean, what other sort of mistakes do you feel that the everyday Hindu is making that is accelerating the demise of Hinduism? Other than language, we've spoken about that. Are there any other factors that you feel that the everyday Hindu is making, that mistakes they're making?
Oh, Bollywood. Okay. That's like one of the biggest ones I see, which and people are not ready to let go of the Bollywood mania. Like they're so infatuated with Bollywood, and oh god, it's like you can't really be a Hindu unless you have Hindu values, and this is something I find very difficult to explain to people. Like it's not just a bunch of traditions and a bunch of festivals. And even on festivals, what do people do? They just drink and they play the DJ and they dance. I mean, you can do that in any party. Okay, that's not really a festival. Like, okay, fine, you're celebrating a festival, but I'm just saying that you don't have Hindu values. People call themselves Hindus, but they don't have Hindu values. And our values were so deep. I'm not saying everybody will have those values, but at least a critical number should have it, right? Unless I see at least a critical number of people, there's always going to be dharma, adharma, and people in between. But at least there needs to be a good number of people who do understand dharma, a good number of people who are somewhere between, deciding between dharma, and then there are the adharmis. That's how every society is. But here, the number of people who even understand or follow dharma is so minuscule that I don't even know what to say. And those values come from understanding Hinduism and understanding the spiritual truths of Hinduism, like simple things like integrity. Simple, they make fun of Yudhishthir all the time. And I'm like, you don't understand what it takes to be a Yudhishthir. I have tried this with several people in the past. I've told them, just stop lying. No lying. Not even to your boss, not even to your teacher, not even to your acquaintance, even casually, just stop lying. And they're not able to do it. They're not able to do it. And when I tell them that I don't lie, people don't believe me because they can't do it. And I've had this vow for, I think, maybe now at least 7, 8 years. So, only even in extreme situations, I would just rather not answer the question than lie. That's my policy. That is the Yudhishthir policy that, okay, if I can't answer your question honestly, I'm just not going to answer it. Right. I'm just taking one example because we don't have time to discuss all Hindu values, but it's just a simple thing. And now Yudhishthir is used as a way to make fun of being integrated to your own values in life. He chose it as his dharma, right? So he was no, there was. It's like as per the description in Mahabharata, I think the Yudhishthir's rath used to stand above the ground a few inches because he was so completely integrated to his chosen path. He may not have been as great as Arjuna in the battlefield or as great as somebody else, or he may have had his own shortcomings, but what he chose, he was 100% integrated to it. There was no doubt about that. In that particular incident, the Draupadi Chirharan episode, all of them fell. None of them were able to follow their dharma. That's why they fell. But other than those incidents, like, he was entirely integrated to what he was doing. So these values have been lost in translation again. Like, people, when they talk about Mahabharata, they only use it to make fun of Yudhishthir. I'm like, you try living like Yudhishthir, you will understand how difficult it is. So these kind of things, even, for when we talk about Bhim, it's always about, oh, don't be like, Gadadhari Bhim. Like, if you're getting angry, they will call you Gadadhari Bhim. Like, you try living like Bhim, you will understand how big a deal it is to be a Bhim. So, and again, Arjuna is used as some sort of a symbol of a confused midlife crisis kind of a person. Hey, you don't know the deep questions Arjuna was asking in that battlefield. And most people are so deluded, they are so unaware of their own emotions that they will never be able to open up to Krishna. I mean, when you go in front of somebody you completely revere, you want to show the best part of you to that person. You don't want to show your lowest and most stupidest ideas to that person, right? So Arjuna was opening up that part of himself to Krishna. That is why he got enlightenment from Krishna. Krishna is not interested in you impressing him. Krishna is interested in you opening up to him. So my problem with the way Hindus are operating these days is their infatuation with Bollywood, which it's not just that Bollywood indoctrinates you with Islamic ideology and all that, but it's much more than that. It makes you stupid. It's just very, very superficial, like you only care about chick jang and dancing and music and DJ, and you don't think beyond these things. There's more to life than that. And they make fun of anybody who doesn't do that. That's another problem, because there's such a mass movement of these kind of things. They find it weird if somebody doesn't care for those kind of things. So that is like, unless somebody can be de-addicted from Bollywood, I don't think they can really become spiritual. It's my own opinion, but like you need to sort of be away from Bollywood for some time to even start making any progress towards spirituality. And being infatuated with Bollywood is where you learn these kind of things, like making comparisons, making derogatory comments on Arjuna and Krishna and Bhim and all these kind of things. It's a very subtle thing where you pick up these things from these movies basically, and you think all festivals are just about this again that I don't know, millennial kind of type of culture. I don't even know what to call it, because it's not even millennial. They've been doing it since the 80s and 90s. So yeah, that's my take, I guess.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, Bollywood's been boycotted in our house for many years now. We haven't watched movies. So yes. I mean, another mistake that I feel the everyday Hindu is making is particularly Hindu parents not spending quality time teaching about Hindu dharma to their children.
Right.
If they're not very sort of Bollywood promoting parents, then perhaps they may be more sort of just focusing on studies. And of course, studies are very important and very good, but there should also be time for studying Hinduism as a family, reading the Shastras, doing Havan once a week at least, doing puja every day. So I think that's another mistake that the everyday Hindu is making. And I think, yes, somebody else mentioned that every Hindu parent, I should say, every Hindu parent should teach about the culture and raise their kids like Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Yes, totally agree. And we will definitely try our best with our son, Hiram. But I saw a few people were asking how he is today, and he's very well. Thank you, everyone. He's now nearly 17 months old.
Okay.
Very, very big and makes a lot of noise and a lot of mess, but he's fantastic. Okay, so on to my final question to you. So this kind of feeds on from this comment here. Make no mistake, the assault on Hinduism is stepping up, more coming our way. Be prepared, everybody. So, Arti, do you think Hinduism can survive?
So I don't believe that anything is impossible. So I do believe Hinduism can survive. And also I believe in Vak Shaktis. I don't like to say things I would not like to see happen. So, I can't make a prophecy of the bad kind. I can't do that because, words have power. So and I've seen this many times, for at least in my life, because, and I think that's one more thing which Hindus don't realize when they're always saying that Hinduism won't survive, because if you believe that, the more you say it, the more you will believe it, the more you will believe it, the more you will act according to it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I don't go with that. I do believe Hinduism can definitely survive. I just think we need to take our survival very seriously. We can't survive with our status quo. So we need to change the status quo for our survival. I don't think I don't think that we should be sort of resting on our laurels, so to say, where we think that, oh, we've done enough and now enough is done and there are enough people working on it. So we've made progress. So we don't need to do anything. No, I think we've only just started with even some of the work that needs to be done. And I think we need people in every aspect of it. So one part which I see ignored is, of course, research and academics. And so I'm trying to hold that bastion here. But, we need people on ground. We need people like you who will teach things to their kids the right way. And we need people to also be better Hindus learning on their own, because you can't teach kids unless you know it yourself. So that's what I wanted to say, actually, when you were talking about Hindu parents not teaching their kids. They don't teach their kids because they don't know anything. So they have no knowledge to pass on to the next generation. That's the sad truth. I don't know, people don't like saying this, but that is what I see. I've seen so many people raising kids, but they don't have any Hindu values, any knowledge, anything to give to the kids. That's why they don't teach it. That's why they're just happy with putting children in school, and the noise is over for a few hours a day, and that's it. So I think we need to really take it very seriously, both the from the knowledge point of view. We need to reclaim our knowledge. We need to, like a few days ago, I was saying in this Lit Fest that we need to rebuild our history, because our history has been purposely written to, to put us on a back foot. So all our history has been written only to make us look like we were some stupid idiots, and the colonizers came and gave us a life. So that's like the one-line summary of all history about Hindus written by the colonizers. So I don't think that we can sort of maintain that status quo. We definitely need to reclaim, not just rewrite. We need to rebuild it from scratch, go back to the source books. And the second is on ground activity, where I feel like at least the organizations which call themselves as Hindu organizations should definitely go on ground and stop conversions, stop cow slaughters, stop all these kind of practices which are injurious to Hinduism. Reclaim your rights. Like, for For example, like in Tamil Nadu, there's the HRCE, which is, completely destroying Hindu temples over there. So Hindus are needed on ground as well. And I think the third part is where, this is sort of a little bit in both the domains, where, I feel like some of the like in some of the movements like environmentalism and stuff, because Hindus have not taken it upon themselves, they are getting hijacked by the leftist lobbies. And no culture, no religion, nothing in the world teaches more environmentalism than Hinduism. So, and we have completely ignored that aspect of Hinduism, of Hindu dharma. And it's very saddening to me, because somehow I have always cared about these things since I was a child. So, it's not that I've suddenly become interested in environment and natural resources. No, I've always cared about it since I was a little girl. And it made me very proud as a Hindu to know that my culture has such deep respect for the five elements, for the forest, for the trees, for the animals. And we need to reclaim these out of the hands of the anti Hindus. So I guess that's, am I out of time?
Nope, I don't know what that sound was actually, but carry on if you wish.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess that's what I think we need to do for Hinduism to survive. Because all of these, and we need to make sure that people understand that environmentalism is a part of Hinduism. When we do that, we don't do that. We do canvas for the rivers or for the fields or whatever, but we're not saying that we are doing this because these are Hindu values, right? We need to also say that when we do it. So I think these are some of, I mean, of course, the list is very long, but in a nutshell, I guess these are the things which we need to do very, very seriously. And, I think we all like to be on Twitter and give, repartees to people on Twitter, and that's needed. I'm not saying it's not needed, but I'm just saying it's not an end in itself. There's a lot of work also which needs to be done, but a lot of people just think that their role in reclaiming Hinduism just begins and ends with Twitter. It doesn't. Twitter is only a channel, a vehicle, platform. It can be a way of expressing yourself, and you should express yourself. I think it's a very good thing, but it doesn't end there. There's a lot more work to be done. So I think, since some people were saying I've not been very active on social media, I just wanted to say this, that the reason I'm not active is because I'm really, really swamped with work. And I try to keep up some of the social media, but I prioritize the work over social media usually. And anyway, we never know when the account is going to be deplatformed. So that's another reason. But hopefully, I won't be deplatformed anytime soon. So there are people who keep trying to hack my account now and then, and all those kind of things keep happening in the background. I've just gotten used to it. So yeah, I guess that's the long answer to your question.
And I think many of the viewers, they really appreciate the work you're doing, RTG, the answers you gave on this session. I mean, the point you made about environmentalism, again, it really chimed with how I feel that, in fact, even in the West, there's now a move towards being more, or a greater awareness of environmentalism. Sales of vegan food are just skyrocketing here in the West, and yet I see the opposite happening in India. When I've been the last few times to India and seen gatherings of Hindus, and how it's almost become like a position or like a status to offer more non-veg in the dish that you're bringing, and that sort of thing. I can just see how it's like the opposite of what's happening in the West, because there is a genuine trend to in being more considerate of animals and the environment in the West. And yet in India, they seem to be copying what they think is happening in the West, but probably that's what was happening in the West maybe 20, 30 years ago, or it was happening in like the worst section of society in the West, like of the lower, the people who have less money, less education. Why would you want to be sort of copying what they are doing? I find it very baffling. So yes, I think that was all of my questions. I'm just seeing if there are any more questions among our viewers. It's So if anyone does have any more questions, please put them in. In the meantime, RTG, if you wouldn't mind just reminding everyone where people can find you on social media again to follow you.
Right. So I'm Parantapah on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's Parantapah. It's there's an A after almost every letter. That's the way to remember it. But it's basically one of the names of Arjuna and also of Hanuman. So Krishna calls Arjuna as Parantap in the Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagwan Sri Ram calls uh, Hanuman as Parantap in the Mukti Upanishad. So that's the name I chose for myself as a. I need to work to that level basically. So that's on these, and the YouTube is Ishitva. I can, if you can just look for Ishitva, Ishittva. I can maybe put the link on the YouTube chat, perhaps. Let me just open this up.
Great. Yeah. Oh, and I can write it in the description as well underneath. Actually, one final question, actually, a new one, RTG. Who is your Ishtadev?
Oh, Mahadeva. I'm a Shaivite, so and that's an easy one.
Yeah.
It's very obvious most of the times that I'm a Shaivite.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, RTG, for joining. Bahut dhanyavad. And thank you to all the viewers as well for joining. As I said at the beginning, please like this video if you enjoyed it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Here we have, oh yes, there we have the YouTube channel. Yes. Please also follow RTG. And yes, thank you so much for joining. Have a very good night, and I'll see you at the next one. Take care.
Thank you. And thanks to all the viewers. Namaste, Jai Shri Ram.
Namaste.